It is well known that tourism is one of the twin pillars of the BVI economy. In fact, the BVI is known as the sailing capital of the world. And with world-famous attractions such as the Bats on Virgin Gorda, the territory welcomes about 1.1 million visitors annually. In today's GIS report, we focus on tourism, which, like other sectors of the local economy, experienced the wrath of Hurricane Irma. My guests today are Director of the BVI Tourist Board, Sharon Flax-Brutus, and Janet Oliver, Executive Director of the Charter Yacht Society. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Sharon, let's start at ground zero, so to speak. What sort of impact did the tourism industry in the BVI sustain?
I would say that the impact on tourism in the British Virgin Islands was actually quite devastating. The good thing is that we are resilient people, the industry is resilient, and we do have a way of bouncing back.
And there are many sectors within the tourism industry. Janet, you belong to one of those particular sectors. Tell us about the general impact to the yachting and also specifically to the company of which you're in charge.
Sure. I would say that the damage to the charter companies was catastrophic. However, as Sharon said, we are resilient. Our sector in particular, the crude yacht sector, we've already had our boat show. We are working our way back. About, I would say 40% of our boats were undamaged and 30% are well on their way to being repaired and should be operational by the beginning of January.
Well, that's certainly good news. Sharon, back to you. Since the initial impact assessment, what has the Tourist Board been busy focusing on in terms of recovery and restoration?
The Tourist Board, as always, is quite busy. Our portfolio is massive, to say the least. We're involved as well in product development as well as marketing. So our teams on the ground as well as in our foreign offices are quite busy. For example, the product development team on the ground has been doing assessments of all of the museums on the beaches. We suffered quite a bit of damage to all of our signage in the British Virgin Islands. So we're having to replace a lot of that. We're looking at the museums, seeing what the damage is, working with the different ministries to make sure that when we rebuild or we rebound, that it's done in a more strategic manner.
Okay, so our infrastructure may have taken a beating, but we have underwater, we have the marine life in the BVI as a major attraction as well. How did that particular sector fare?
The underwater, which is great, the diving, all of our dive sites have rebounded quite nicely. In fact, our dive association is quite active, along with the Association of Reef Keepers, and working again with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labour and Conservation and Fisheries to make sure that coastal debris and debris underwater is cleaned up so that we're ready to welcome guests.
Janet, that is something that's particularly important for your sector. What has been done from your perspective thus far?
Well, I think that the crew have tried to give back during this time when they're not necessarily as busy as they would be. We just had our charter yacht show, and at that show we took brokers and crews over to Jos Van Dyke. We spent a day clearing up debris, painting, and just helping out, just giving a helping hand. They want to help each anchorage, each land facility, help give them the opportunity to welcome guests in an environment that is pleasing to the guests so that the guests have a good experience.
So amidst all the devastation, there are many opportunities that are opening up for us to do things a little differently, but still, to ensure that we have a sustainable tourism product. The Premier recently stated that the BVI is open for business. Sharon, what does that mean specifically for the tourism industry?
For tourism, it means for us that we're moving from crisis to recovery. Yes, it is, we were dealt a blow, but we do have to start somewhere. And that's where people like Janet comes in, being able to bring sectors of the industry up at different stages. So saying that we're open for business, we are open for business. The good thing about the BVI is that we have 60 different islands and we have a varied tourism product, so we can bring the sailing up for us. Then we can look at focusing on our small properties and our villas, which would be a shorter build time, we're hoping, and then look at bringing back our larger properties.
What sort of feedback, you mentioned there the accommodation sector, what sort of impact did that sector sustain, and how soon can we expect to see movement on that front and us beginning to welcome stayover visitors?
We are actually welcoming stayover visitors right now, and in fact the land-based accommodation sector, some of them have been hosting relief workers. I'm a realist, plain and simple, and yes, it is that we lost quite a large percentage of our room stock. We looked at, in the initial estimates, over 80% of our land-based accommodations sustained major damage. So yes, it's a rebuild process. It is going to take a while, but in order to be sustainable, we need to do things right, so that we don't have haphazard growth, that is done in a very staged way, and that we adhere to some sort of a strategy in rebuilding.
What are the challenges that currently face the industry, given the extent of the devastation that we experienced just 2.5 months ago?
The initial challenge, I would say, is competition and rebounding in the face of competition. Some of our competitors have jumped on the opportunity, and we expect that, because I would probably do the same if I were in their shoes. So that is one of the big challenges, competition. Another challenge remains getting to the destination. It was a challenge before, and it remains a bigger challenge even now. We are for the most part, completely dependent on the gateways of St. Thomas and Puerto Rico. They've suffered extensive damages as well, and we're working right now with the Department of Tourism in the U.S. Virgin Islands, because we see that we're losing a lot of lift into St. Thomas because their major hotels are closed. And of course, another major challenge is the perception in the U.S. and in the UK of the British Virgin Islands and other hurricane-ravaged countries. That's why it's so important that we're in recovery, we're rebuilding. As my chairman likes to say, we're down, but we're not out, and that's why we've gravitated to changing our campaign and you'll see that coming out, in the short term. BVI, we're still sailing.
That brings us right back to Janet. I'm sure you can speak to some of the same challenges that Sharon just alluded to. Are there any additional challenges that you face? I know the one with airlift was particularly important for your sector.
That's true. We had a number of charter yacht brokers who were trying to get to the show, and airlift became a big issue, canceled flights. But I think also images speak volumes, and we need to get vibrant, beautiful images of the BVI out there, because we have charter guests who are booked to come down here on undamaged vessels, but they are nervous because of the images that they've seen, and so we have to convince them that our waters are still blue, the underwater is still intact, our beaches are still pristine, and just as more people start to come out here and then go back and spread the word, and of course with social media, I'm sure that we will start to we'll start to slowly but surely come back.
And it's also an opportunity to put a different spin on the marketing, because persons cannot just come just for a vacation anymore. They can come and devote a half a day, a full day to helping in one of the communities.
Absolutely. I think that there are people who have been to the BVI over and over again. Our repeat rate is about 1/3. So 1 in every 3 guests comes back to go on a crude yacht. And so they have fallen in love with the BVI, and it's their desire to come and give back. So if it's an afternoon or a full day, they want to see us recover from this.
Sharon, is that type of activity something that the Tourist Board would readily endorse?
Yes, and in fact, we are endorsing it right now. We on our Facebook page, as well as our One BVI, as well as our website BVI Tourism. There is an icon that can lead persons into what we call volunteer tourism. They can reach out to the BVI Tourist Board, especially I know that we're looking for skilled tradesmen, and they can come into the BVI on vacation. We would help to facilitate them because we're happy that there are people who just absolutely love the BVI. I mean, we've heard of hotel properties who have reached out to let them know that they won't be open, and they've said, go ahead and keep our deposit, or we'd like to come down and help. Yes, we know your rooms are not perfect, but we love the BVI, and I think that leads a lot to the brand integrity of the destination and who and what our destination is, and it's important that we maintain that.
Janet, based on the level of activity that we have seen so far with the start of the sailing season, with the annual boat show that you had just this past weekend, what are your hopes? Are you optimistic about the future of the industry?
Sure, I am. And it might be a little bit slower this year, but I am optimistic. There were several boats at the show this year that had 15 charters on their books, which is a very, that's a full calendar really, and a number of others who had between 4 and 8 charters. So that's certainly it's kind of like an average for going into the season. So I'm optimistic that we will, we will have a season, and I think that as I said, as clients come and they have a good time, they go back, and we're able to share more about those personal experiences, and that's what the BVI is about. It really is a very personal experience. People really attach themselves to the BVI and to the people and the experience here.
Sharon, is there a recovery strategy for the tourism industry?
Yes, there is. There is a recovery strategy, both on the ground from a product development standpoint and from a marketing standpoint. We will begin to see the fruits of that within the coming months, recognizing as well that there is a slow ramp up. It was important for us to determine where the industry really was. It was important for us to assess the readiness of the industry to come back, because as you know, we've been on a major campaign in terms of tourism in the BVI, where it's important that safety is at the forefront of everything that we do, and that we're friendly and we're efficient. So we're holding on to those concepts to make sure that our recovery plan, there is a 100-day strategy in place, both in terms of marketing and PR and in terms of product development.
Okay, and I'm sure with that recovery strategy will come a new message to prospective visitors to the BVI.
I wouldn't say that our message would be new. In terms of attracting visitors, our message to the BVI has always been we're a pristine destination, we're a luxury destination, not necessarily luxury as defined by a price point, but by the experience that the visitor has in the BVI, which is one of a very personal nature. So yes, it is that, our roads may not be the best, or museums may have a challenge, but a lot of times when persons come to the BVI, yes, they do talk about how beautiful it is, how our waters are nice, but they always they single out at least one experience that they've had with a person that they've met. And I think that if we keep that at the forefront of what we do, and in terms of understanding that tourism is our business, and tourism is here to stay. Tourism is for the BVI masses, and I think that if all of us understand that and keep that at the forefront, we'll be fine. I know some of us may be a little too young to remember what happened with Hugo. And some of us, Hurricane Hugo, some of us held our heads and said that was the end. And look where we grew from Hugo. So this, I find, is an opportunity for us to reset and recalibrate and take BVI to the next level.
Sounds like some very wise words there. Janet, prior to the start of this interview, you mentioned that the situation now is sort of reminiscent of the early days of sailing. And within that, it's an opportunity in itself for the yachting industry.
Absolutely. I used to charter back in the late 80s and early 90s, and I think that this is a golden opportunity for people who really want to sit in an anchorage and be one of maybe 3 or 4 yachts and not necessarily one of 40. And so I think that this is the time to come back and go up to a little beach bar and no blended drinks, but that's okay. There are plenty of drinks you can have that aren't blended. So I think it's a great opportunity for people who would really like to turn the clock back a bit.
Any final words from you ladies? I mean, from this interview, I gather that there is hope, there's optimism. We're down, as you said, Sharon, but we're not out.
No.
What are your final words?
Our final words is that I'd like, as we keep saying, BVI strong, one BVI. Tourism is important, and we need to remain positive in the face of whatever happens. As some people say, for us it's one day at a time, and for others maybe it's 1 hour at a time. Stick by stick, we will get there. I'm positive, I'm confident in that for tourism in the BVI.
Janet, I'm sure you like to echo those sentiments.
Absolutely. And I just, the marine sector, and particularly the crude yacht sector, has a tendency to be a little bit removed from the landside community because they're always busy out on the waters. But I see this as a great opportunity for us all to come together and work towards a common cause, and that is to recover.
Together, we shall recover. And that brings us to the end of this GIS report. I am Communications Specialist Philomena Robertson. Thank you for joining us. Do tune in again next time.